All right, so I've got my headset on and I've got a fresh cup of coffee here, so it must be time for another tutorial. This time around we're going to try and do a simple treasure chest. The modeling for this won't be very elaborate. We're going to do it very simple, very low poly, and then we're going to use some Photoshop trickery to add texture and bump map to it. So right away I'm going to make sure I've got a brand new scene here. I'm going to go to my polygons and I'm going to start with a cube. Go ahead and shape this just a little bit. I'm going to make it like a 0.7 high, 1 deep, 0.75 high. 1 deep is fine, but let's go 1.5 wide. And you can see we've got a little bit more form there. I'm going to move that up just a touch so that it's on the line. Press F to zoom in on this. I'm going to grab that top face, which I did through the right-click menu here. Went to Faces. I'm going to open up my modeling toolkit, and we're going to do a little extrusion to actually inset it. So I don't want any thickness on that. 0 there, and I just want to offset it by 0.1. Yeah, 0.1 looks right. Maybe 0.15. Too much. 0.1. Go with your gut. All right. Click out. I'm going to extrude again and come back down. So my local translate to be a negative 0.65. And that should get us 0.1 from the bottom. And now we have a box. It's a good start. To give it just a little bit more form, I'm going to select the top 4 faces, and I'm going to scale those out just a bit. And kind of drag around, something like that. Maybe a little more. All right, then you see it's got some slope to it. And believe it or not, that is just about it for the bottom part of this treasure chest. Go back to object mode. Now let's give this a top. We need a lid. So I'm going to go ahead and create a cylinder. Back to my attribute editor. Let's give it a radius of say 0.67-ish and a height of 1.5, which as you will recall was our width of the treasure chest itself. And I'm going to cut these down to say 16 subdivisions around and 0 on the caps, and then I've got a nice solid cap on the end here. I think that's about the size I need. Pull that up. Flip it over. Rock it back and forth apparently. Make sure that's at a solid 90. All right, and a couple things we can do. So since I scaled that, it's just a little too short, but not wide enough. All right, let me go back to the box. I'm going to scale those out Whoa, wrong tool. Get on scale, scale those out just a little bit more. To give that even more form. Yeah, it's a bit much. There we go. Back and forth, back and forth. Alright, yeah, we'll make it dramatic and cartoonish, whatever. Okay, and then let me grab my, switch back to object mode. And I'm going to scale the top until it's just about at the width. There we go. What's nice is we did everything at 0, so we should be good there. Some of the bottom feels just off. We'll get to it. All right, let's finish creating the top of this, and then we'll go back and we'll start scaling things down to each other. So I'm going to pull this all the way up so we can work with the bottom of it. Hit F. All right, I'm going to go into line mode, or edges. And I'm going to try and select everything underneath that halfway point. So there we go. I'm going to scale it and flatten it out. Now we've got a flat bottom for the top. Move them up to where it's almost at that halfway point for the cylinder, but maybe just a little bit more, right? So we've got a little more form to it. Okay. I grab these edges. What's happened now is we've got a lot of extra edges. We don't need these. So I'm going to grab these 7 edges. I'm going to hold Control and hit Delete. And that should have gotten rid of not only the edges, but their corresponding vertices. We didn't have extra pieces just laying around. All right. I'm going to go again to edges. I'm going to grab the 4 on the bottom. As you can see, we've got some weird smoothing going on here. So I'm just going to go up here to Mesh Display, harden the edge. And then we've defined our boundaries quite well. All right. Face mode, I'm going to grab the bottom. Back to my modeling toolkit. I'm going to try to give about a 0.15 offset here to match that 0.1 that we scaled out, if you'll remember. So that's why it's a little more. That looks good. Extrude one more time with 0 thickness. And then we'll local translate just 0.25, whatever, just enough to get it up there. And we've started to go back up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to double click this selector tool to get my tool settings out. And let me go back into object mode real quick just to pull this up. Actually, you know what? Let me just hide the bottom of the chest for now. So I've got the bottom selected. I'm going to hide that selection. All right, now we just have the top to worry about. So I'm going to go into edge mode again. I'm going to grab these 2 edges. Opposite each other, and I'm going to add in some of those lines we just got rid of. So there's the connect tool. Apparently I selected more edges than I thought. Let me undo all that. one line, two lines, two edges selected, that's what we want. All right, now back to connect. And I've already set this to 3 segments. By default, it's on 1. We would have gotten that. Not enough. So I'm going to set that to 3. That's good. And I don't think I need the tools anymore. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to hit 4 and go into wireframe mode. And I'm going to start moving these edges back up to kind of reform the underside of this. So start there. Yeah, that looks funky. We'll fix it. Grab these 2 edges. Pull them up just slightly. Or at least not as much as the other. That looks good. Move this one in. And this one in. Do they match up perfectly? No. Don't you say anything. You don't tell, I won't tell. See, it all works. Pull these down just a little bit more. Just a smidge. That looks good. All right, go back to 5. And that looks pretty good. Just in case, well, let me do a quick render. We've got some weird smoothing on the inside there. Unless that's just shadows. Just that one. All right. Easy to fix. Grab these 2 edges and just soften them. Good enough. All right, back to display. I'm going to show all geometry at least. Our bottom's back. Odd. Back to object mode. There we go. Let's pull that down. That almost matches. Let's scale a little bit on this bottom part. Or not. Actually, you know what? Let's do. Because that lines up pretty well. Close enough for now. I think what I want to do is scale the bottom of the bottom. Too many polys to count. All right, grab this face. Grab that face. 2 faces. Great. We'll scale those. Grab the yellow, and we'll just pull them out just a little bit. Alright, now it's not nearly as crazy. One final trick, and this will be done. So I'm going to pull the top back down. Go to my attribute editor. Too far. Okay. That's just about down on top. All right, the final thing I want to do with this is we want this lid to be easily opened. And so I'm going to, I've got my movement selection tool on. And if you just hold down the D key, whoop, back to object mode. Hold down D. And then I can move the pivot point for this object without moving the object. So let me get into my full screen mode here, or my multi-screen mode here, just so I can get a better view of what's going on. I'm holding down D, and I'm moving this pivot point to be as close to the very edge as I can. Hold down D. That looks pretty close to the edge. Hold down D and drag it down. Where'd it go? Undo that. I don't know why my thing is disappearing now. There we go. With D held down, I'm moving down roughly to the bottom. That's really close. Okay, now check out what we just did. I'm going to go full screen on this with our pivot point right at the back. Now I can just grab this thing and open it just like a treasure chest lid. Very nice. All right. That is our modeled treasure chest. I think we could do a little bit with lining up the lines of the top and the bottom, but we're going to move forward. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse all the history on these. So with that selected, go edit, delete by type history, and I don't have all this extra junk in here. I'm going to do the same for the top. It'll be easier to get to our materials later. All right, I'm going to go straight into a UV unwrap. So here's my UV editor, and as you can see, let me pull this down a little bit. Since this started as a cube, we still have a regular cube map around that. I'm going to go to UV, and I'm going to do, this may not work. Do an automatic unwrap. I'm going to hit layout, which gives things some more space. And that actually looks pretty good. Let me blow this one up. So since really this is a very simple object and all the faces are kind of doing their own thing, we're not going to expect any textures to wrap around like we would say on a character. So if we're doing on more of an organic character or something with a lot of roundness to it, right? Each of these shapes, we want them to be stitched up close to each other so that as we painted across one, we could paint across the other and not have to lose our flow there. For this treasure chest, really all we need is the outlines for the texture and the bump map we're about to do. So everything being pretty much separated except for this right here is actually going to work in our favor. Let's pull this down just a tad so we can see the corresponding. Okay. This on the end here happens to be the front of our treasure chest, which makes that the back. These larger are the two sides, and of course the other angled edges are the insides. Bottom, inside bottom, and there's the lip. What I need to remember right here is that this in the bottom left corner is the front of the treasure chest. And that's about it. We're actually done here in Maya for now. I'm going to go ahead and save my file. Treasure chest. save that into scenes. We were already in scenes. Way to go. Everything was set up right. Great. All right. Now I'm going to take this UV unwrap that I just did. I'm going to get a UV snapshot. This is set again to what I want it to since I've already done this. But we're going to want to go to about a 1024 size by 1024 size. Keep it at that size for now, considering what we're about to do in Photoshop. All the other scales will line up. But depending on the room you've got, you may go to 2048 by 2048 and really go crazy with detailed texture. 1024 is going to give us quite a bit to work with. The color value of white is fine. It's just going to be the outline for this snapshot. And even the Maya file is fine. I'm just going to change the name of the file. This will be treasure out UV and hit OK. And then immediately back off, because here's the other thing I didn't do. Make sure everything is selected when you do the UV snapshot. That would have tried to just do the one poly, perhaps. Treasure out UV, everything else should be set. Now hit OK, and we've just saved this file down here. You can see treasure out.iff. Cool. Now we'll go into Photoshop. I'm going to open up that file. So I'm going to open something new. Here's my treasure chest. So this is on the Mac. I go to Documents, Maya, Projects, Treasure Chest, Images is where that's saved, and there's my output. So I'm just going to open that guy up. Wonderful. That's layer 0, and here's where we really get crazy. So this is the outline. Spelling does count still. I'm going to go ahead and make a new group. And then in that group, I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to pull the outline up top. Above this group, if I can get the thing to cooperate. There we go. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's going to be the metal for our layer. So I've already gone ahead and I've selected a bunch of colors. I'm going to use 3E, 3E, 3E is the hex value for this. And so I've got a nice deep gray. And in layer 1, I'm just going to paint this guy full of our deep gray. Woohoo, we have metal. All right, I'll turn him off for now, and I'm going to start a new layer, pull him down underneath the metal, and I need some new colors for this. So I'm going to go with some colors. I've got a color palette here on the internet that I was just playing with, and I'm trying to pick 2 browns to be the base for wooden texture. So I'm going to start with cinnamon, which is 7B3F00. Actually, I can just copy that. Go into Photoshop. I'm going to paste that in. Blammo. I've got my color. I'm going to choose the second color down here. And let me go grab something cool. Let's go with gold 6 here, which is CD whatever. CD7F32. Copy that. Paste that in. Okay. I'm going to flip these colors and I'm going to paint the lighter color into this new layer. And here's where the magic happens. So I'm going to go up here to Filter and Render, and we're going to do Fibers. Now these are not the presets, but this is what I've played with before, and so I've got the variance sitting at 30, the strength sitting at 10, and you can see these fibers gives us a very wood grain look. I can hit randomize all I want, and it kind of just changes up the pattern. We'll go with that for now. Okay, and boom, I've got a wood texture. Just like that. Another thing we can do is we can duplicate this, and we could have a separate but similar wood texture so that when we cut these into planks later that the fibers didn't line up, but we'll We'll save that for another time when we're being a little more creative. Right now we're doing the quick and easy, allegedly. Okay, so now I've got my metal layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my magic wand, and on almost every one of these shapes, I'm going to, on the outline, sorry, grab on the outline, I'm going to grab inside of each of these shapes. The top portion we'll leave alone, but I've got all the interior angles and the exteriors and the top and the bottom. I'm going to go down to my metal layer again now that I've got these selected, and I'm going to go up here to select. I'm going to choose modify, and I'm going to contract. To give this a little bit of a different look here in a little bit, I'm going to go contract by 50 to start with, and that's going to pull way in. And as you can see on that contract, I've still got very sharp edges, which is fine if you want that. I want a little bit more roundness to this, so what I'm going to do is grab this same selection, modify, and I'm going to expand back out. I'm going to expand by, say, 10 pixels, so we'll have a total of 40. And as I expanded, it added some roundness to this, which is kind of what I was going for. That may still be a little thick on the metal. I'm going to go ahead, and this round I'm going to expand again by another 10. Sure, we'll go with that. Then we'll have a little more wood and a little less metal. So with all of these shapes selected, I'm going to just go ahead and hit delete on my metal layer, and I can see the wood behind it. Magic, right? I know. Command D to deselect. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to give the metal layer a little extra outline with an outer glow. So I'm going to go up here, and what I want this outer glow to do is to darken that which is behind it. And I'm going to use a black color. So I'm going to just slide these around and get down to black. And everything else looks fine, 75% opacity, softer, size 5. And that's just kind of going to add some shadow to make it look like perhaps this metal is sitting above the wood layer. All right, that's what I've done. And almost all we have left to do is to draw some lines in here to kind of separate out our wood. So this looks more like wood planks and less like wood panels, I guess. So let me go to a single line marquee here. Go to layer 2. I'm actually going to create a new layer. And I'm just going to kind of somewhat arbitrarily, let me zoom in a touch on this. That's good. That kind of gets us everything. At a somewhat arbitrarily manner, I'm going to select with this single line marquee tool. I'm just going to select a couple of lines. I'm going to hold down Shift and select another one. And these are lines where I imagine this wood is being separated, and they don't have to be exact, right? Can I get a cool, more of an organic hand-built look if they're somewhat staggered? Keep going here. Just going to do this almost all the way down where I've got wood fibers. Slide up. And that kind of gets us where we want. Right? All along the wood, we've got lines to delineate. So I'm going to need to be very careful, and I've still got my marquee tool on. I'm going to come right in here. First, I'm going to hit this button and go back to my black and white. And as I'm hovering over this single line marquee, there my icon changed, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say fill with the foreground color. In this new layer, I'm Command D, and we've got immediately these little black lines going through everything, kind of making it look like wood. I'm going to add a little bit more definition to these. So let me add a thicker stroke to this. Not that thick. Okay, I'm going to go by 1. And let's say come from the center. And we've had just a little bit of definition. I think that's good right there. All right. We're going to go with that. One final thing I want to do is, since we highlighted this as the front of the treasure chest, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit more feature there. So right above this layer, let me go back to selecting this color. Actually, let me go a layer up, just so I can do some crazy things on my own. Do I need to? No, I can go back down to this layer. I'll keep this other layer here. We'll use that. So I've got this selection. I think it's about in the middle. I think I want it to be a little narrower. It's all guesswork. It's art, right? Sure. So I've got that, and I'm going to round that just a bit. So I'm going to go back up to Select, Modify, and I'm going to smooth that by a radius. We've got quite a round radius around the rest of it, but 4 looks good for that. Let's go 5. All right. And I'm still on my metal layer, so this should, as I fill this in, should just take on our layer effects. So I'm going to go Fill, right-click, Fill, foreground color, Command D to deselect, and look, I've got a little divot coming out here of metal above my wood. Now, on layer 4, I'm going to click back on this. This I definitely want to be black. I'm going to start a bit of a keyhole. That's just probably placed just fine. So go back to this. Fill that again with foreground color, which is now black. And I've gone to my round selector. I'm going to hold down Shift. I've deselected everything first, and then I'm going to hold down Shift to make sure it stays round. And I'm going to pull out the top of a keyhole. That looks pretty good. Let me just move that real quick. I can also use arrows to move it more precisely. It's actually a little big, but shoot, we'll go with it. Fill, foreground color, Command D, and we've got a keyhole at the very front of our treasure chest. This is about all we need for the base texture, and then the trickery comes next. So I'm going to turn off the outline, and we've just got this set of stuffs. I'm going to go to File, Save As. You know what, treasure, let me just save the PSD as well right here. That's great, because we're gonna mess things up and we'll need to come back. Now I want to save it as a PNG. Favorite file type. Treasure bottom texture, because we're gonna have to do the same thing for the top. That's all well and good. Okay, now we've got a texture. So we can go back into Maya. Let me close this UV editor. Back in object mode. Just so I can see what's going on, first I'm going to lift the lid. I'm going to blow the lid off of this. The bottom. Now I'm going to go over here to rendering, and I'm going to give it a brand new blend material. Now watch what it does on the side there. We've got a blend. It immediately opened up our nodes for this. So in color, I'm going to click on this little checkerboard looking thing. I'm going to select file because we want to add a file to this. Now on image name, I'm going to select this folder again. I'm going to go to images, and there's our treasure bottom texture. Look at that thing, just beautiful. Open that. In my viewport, I'm going to hit 6, and you can see we've got texture on this treasure chest. If you look closely, right, you can kind of see that it's still really just flat. There's not a lot going on here, but boy, it kind of looks a whole lot cooler than it did before, just a plain white gray. So that's step 1 of our texture. But wait, there's more. We're really going to get detailed here. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop after I take a sip of coffee. And after I click save on this thing, so I'm going to go ahead and save this over the top. Yippee-ki-yay. I could have really done any one of these materials. Blend gives us a lot of nice specular, and so as we bring in a bump map here in a little bit, then we'll see a lot more shine on it than, say, had we chosen a Lambert. Lambert gives us a little flatter but more cartoony. You can play with all these, and once we've got these UV maps in place, you can go in and throw a brand new, you can use a Fong or whatever, and reset these files and see what the different material types give you. Anyway, let's talk bump maps. So that's my group 1. I'm going to name this top, not top, this is the bottom of it. Bottom texture, great. And I'm almost just going to reuse this entire group as my bump. So I think I can duplicate group. Yes. Let's call this bottom bump. I'm going to close bottom texture and in fact turn it off. So what a bump map is basically it's trickery. For the most part, your bump maps should be black and white because I mean they really don't need to have any other color because it goes off of the brightness value anyway. So black and white just kind of clues us in as the artist that this is a bump map. There are normal maps and there's displacement maps and they use all kinds of weird colors, but for a bump map, really black and white's all we need. So step 1 in my bump map, we'll start with the wood, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to first I'm going to name these. What was I thinking? Lines, metal, keyhole. Right? Now we know what those are. So I'm going to go to my wood, and I'm going to go up here to Image and Adjustments, and I'm going to make that black and white. Default presets is fine. I'm going to do some craziness here. I'm going to go to Adjustments again, Brightness and Contrast. I'm going to pull the brightness all the way up as a means of minimizing the contrast. I'm actually going to pull the contrast up, yeah, to make it even more bright. I'm going to pull all those up, and that way this bump isn't so gnarly. So I've pulled all those up on my black and white layer. Now I've got a black and white wood layer. And believe it or not, I'm actually going to need to darken this because on a bump map, basically a flat gray just kind of sits there. And the darker something is, the farther in it looks. So it kind of pushes in and the light reflects to make it look like it's indented. And then as you get closer to white, it looks like something is extruded. So this is actually the opposite right now looking at it of what I would want. I want the metal to look as if it's standing out farther than the wood. So I need the wood to be darker. So I'm going to give it a color overlay. What color is that? Yeah, just a standard gray is fine. And I'm going to set that. I'm going to set that to a multiply so that we still get our darkness coming through for our wood definition. So okay on that. That's all well and good. And I'm actually working my way up the chain here. So let me look at the lines. So the lines are cool right now, right? They're going to definitely give us the look we want as far as indenting. But I think we can add a little bit to these lines to make the wood look as if it's rounding as it's getting closer to the edge. So I'm going to double click here and open up my layer styles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this an outer glow similar to what we did before. I'm going to want this to darken. I'm going to want to actually use a dark color. Weird. Okay. What if we should make this more precise or be soft? Oh, precise gives us a lot more definition. That really rounds it a lot. We'll go with it to give us what we're looking for, and then the opacity. We'll leave the opacity where it's at. But what I might do is pull the size down. Yeah, 4 is good. All right, so we'll have our dark edge, and then we'll have the wood slowly kind of creeping into that edge. So that's good. I think as far as that goes, both of those are fine. But the problem that we're going to have now is the metal is really just kind of plain. Very flat. It's all single color, so there's really not going to be a lot of definition to it. So let's just go ahead and paint it white. We'll start with a white paint. Let me flip these over here. Got a white paint because we want this to be light. So there, we've got a white metal. Now it's just going to stick right out, but we want to give it some character. So I'm going to go back to my layer styles, and I'm just going to work through the gamut here. We've got the outer glow. That's good. Really, the next thing I want to do is give it a gradient, a pattern overlay. And in my patterns, I've got a blue specks, which I believe it's part of the artistic surfaces. Anyway, you can come in here and play in Photoshop and load patterns and append patterns and really just go crazy. But I think blue specks should be something you get almost out of the box. It's one of your artistic surfaces, or one of those. So anyway, I'm going to use blue specks. I'm going to leave it at the scale that is, but that's going to be really noisy and really crazy. So let me just pull this back a bit. I'm going to set the opacity of this to 25. So we've got a very faint speckling going on. Normal's probably good. We'll leave that. And then I think, let me look at adding another color just to mute this. So let me look at another color overlay. Standard gray is fine. Set this to a multiply blend mode. And then pull the opacity to 50-ish. Yeah, let's go with that. About half opaque. And so this is lighter, and I guess everything could be a lot lighter. But it's definitely lighter than the wood here. Actually, let me go even lighter on this color overlay. We'll say go to 35 on that. That's fine. So our metal's got some variance to it. It's going to probably end up looking like it was pounded a lot in a nice foundry or a blacksmith. and our keyhole is going to be fine just the way it is. It's going to give us an indentation. One last thing we could do is give this some rivets, right? And so we won't have to make any color for it, but we can give it some little dots and bumps to make it look like we've riveted the edges. So I'm going to start a brand new layer here above the keyhole. Use my elliptical marquee tool here, and with my outline on so I know what's going on, I'm just going to kind of go into the corners of each of these. Hold shift and select. These are probably going to be different sizes even, that's okay. We're definitely getting a handmade look for this treasure chest. This didn't come out of a factory. I'm just holding down shift and selecting more and more of these. I'm not going to do the insides of the treasure chest with these rivets, but I'm going to make sure I get the outer bunch. And shift in this case is not making them all the way around, it's just making them added to the selection. So I'm going to have some weird shapes. Whatever. Right, I'm going to do along the bottom. Very arbitrary. And I'm going to get the top lip. So right in here. We could definitely be more precise about all this and make one size rivet and move it all over the place, but we just want to show off what we can do. So there's all different sizes. I've already done this, so white is my foreground color, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to fill this on my brand new layer with my foreground color. Command D, and look at all these rivets. So since they're white, they're going to poke way out of our treasure chest. And let's try to make it not look like they're just straight bolts sticking out, but maybe round them a bit. We can do that either by an outer glow. Ooh, something like that. Or I wonder if an inner shadow. That'd be so. This is kind of what we want it to look ultimately on the bump map. But if we did this to the bump map, it'd be funky, right? We'll let the light do its thing in the bump maps. So an inner glow. I think we're gonna have to go outer glow. All right, check this out. Cancel this. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna select everything outside because I think these are gonna be kind of big, right? After we put our outer glow. So I've selected everything that is not the bumps, and I'm going to again modify my selection by expanding into those. Let's go in by 3. And we've got much tinier little dots. Right, I'm going to hit delete. We end up with very tiny dots. Command D. But those are just the points at the end, and so now when I add that outer glow, which can be more precise, get the 3 back. Want to lighten. That kind of gets us back to where we want to be. Sure, we'll go with that. So we're going to call this rivets, For a bump map, I'm again going to turn off the outline, because if that comes through, they're going to wreak havoc on the texture map, especially on a bump map. So, looks like we've got a bump map, which kind of looks impressive here, but let's see what it actually does. So, File. First, I'm going to save my PSD. I'm going to save this as, again, a PNG. Treasure bottom bump. Save that. That's fine. Back to Maya. All right. Look at that. Look at this flatness. Look at that. It's ridiculous. Let's do a render. Look at how shiny and flat that is. Grab that, hit F. You're not going to believe how this changes. Okay, so there it is with just a texture on it. So I'm going to select that. Could have sworn I'd flattened all of this history, so I'm going to do it again. Delete by type, history. There we go. Now we're down to my cube shape, and my blend. So down here I've got a bump mapping right underneath color on blend, right? A couple down. Again, I'm going to hit the checkerboard, hit File, and that says, great, we know there should be a bump, but we don't know what it is. So bump value, I'm going to hit this little square with a play button in it. Image name, hit the folder, bottom bump. There's our artwork. Open. Look at that. Look at that. We've definitely got more form here. You can see a lot of bumpiness to the metal, maybe to the extreme. You can definitely see that it looks like we've rounded out toward the edges of our wood planks. And the wood definitely looks a whole lot more like grainy wood. Let's do a quick render. Super cool. And that's that. I'm going to leave you to follow these exact same methods to texture the top of the treasure chest. And I'll be back in a second to see what mine ends up looking like. And we're back in Maya one more time. I've already applied the texture. Luckily, most of what I needed to do in Photoshop, I already had layers for. So I just kind of copied some layer styles and pasted them onto new layers. And we have a texture map, at least for the top of our treasure chest. I've just completed the bump map based on that. I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Slide all the way down to our blend, bump mapping, file once again. Click, click, click. And the treasure top bump. Look at that guy. So we've got very defined and very detailed treasure chest with really very, very simple geometry. So that is the power of Photoshop texturing and bump mapping. And I'm ready to throw some treasure in this treasure chest. I hope yours turned out even better than this, and see you next time.